Okay, box drill, stand by. Contact. Ceasefire, ceasefire. Shooters, your next drill will be a failure to stop drill to the pelvis. Stand by. Contact. Ceasefire, ceasefire.
Hello. If you want to support us here at The Contemporary Gentleman, you can buy into our Spy series, links below. And depending on when this was recorded, we may or may not have an Instagram and or Patreon. If we do, links are below. Cheers. Hello everyone, this is James Donaldson and I'm bringing you a video on night vision. It's kind of an overview. What are you getting yourself into? What do you not know now that you should know when making your first purchases, doing your research, things like that. So if you're interested in learning about all that, stay tuned. Now, getting into the gentleman's disclosure. As I said, we're going to be talking about night vision and getting into the market, what the accessories is like, what ones you might need or don't need, or what kind of accessories, that sort of thing. Where does my military and civilian experience come in? Well, for military experience, I've been using night vision for just shy of 13 years now. And so I spent a lot of time under it. Now when it comes to my knowledge of the accessories and everything, it was a little more limited until I got into it on the civilian side. So that's where that experience comes in. I don't inherently just shoot amazing because I use night vision under the military. There's a lot more to night vision than just shooting, which we'll talk about. Now, two big types differences. Well, one, you got thermal, which is a whole different animal, goes off to heat signature. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about devices that are amplifying light. And there's two main kinds. There's digital night vision and analog. I really won't be talking about digital at all. Now, some of the recordings you're going to see was used with the digital recorder, night vision recorder. Again, we're not really going to talk about it, but understand when things look kind of weird or more colorful, that's what that is. Now, it has its own limitations. Again, the video's not on that. TRX Arms has a couple great videos about the differences, actually. And so you can go check that out. I don't know if I'll ever have a video on that. If anything, I'll do a video on the camera I use for night vision filming, which is a Psionics Aurora. Not particularly great, but for the price, it kind of is great. I mean, you can film in night vision. It's not great about that. So, anyway, now, a special thanks to GPNVGs / GP Armory and Josh Hall. They were a wealth of information. They're where I acquired a handful of this gear, and so big thanks to them for all their support. Now let's get into it. So jumping in the meat and potatoes, what is night vision? How the hell does it work? Well, basically, you're just using a device to amplify light. And so things that are very dim are going to look very bright. Things that are bright are going to look really bright. And light, like infrared light, that you can't see on a visual spectrum with the naked eye, or through a lot of recording equipment, you can actually see. So some examples would be, I have this laser imaging module which emits a light, but that light is invisible to the naked eye. Sometimes, so there's a whole other IR spectrum, and some of those lights can be picked up by cameras, some of them it can't, all that kind of thing. There's actually some shots in my footage I noticed where there's a IR flashing light on my cell phone. Kind of fucking creepy. But anyway, so just kind of understands the basic principle of how it works. It's a spectrum of the lighting that you can't see with the naked eye. So some of you might ask, well, if I have night vision, why do I need light, such as infrared light? Well, the answer is simple. Since all night vision does is enhance natural light, if you have a shortage of natural light, then you're going to need some more light. So adding light, especially light no one else can see, being infrared, then that's going to be quite helpful. And when you look at certain landscapes, you're going to see shadows and things. So looking under a bridge from a fair bit away, you're going to see shadows. So having an IR light to illuminate whatever might be under those shadows is going to be very helpful. That is the point of an IR light. Now next, kind of in your next big decision is your single tube versus your dual tube versus your quad tube. So the quad tube, those are like the super cool, fancy looking ones with the 4, you know. And the main thing is single and dual tube both only have about 40 degrees of vision. Now there's some panning dual tubes that kind of push it out to like, I think 65 degrees. At least the GPNVG does. Now, low light illuminations, which makes the M1 dual tube night vision, which is what I have, they have a set that kind of pans. I don't know what the degrees are on that. Now the quad panoramic, whatever, they have 97 degrees field of view. So that's like that versus that. So pretty awesome. Now most of you are probably going to be in the single tube or dual tube market. Single tube kind of starting around the $2,000 range, going up to just above $4,000. Dual tubes running from probably as low as probably $6,000 up to like $13,000, depending on a bunch of things which we'll talk about. And then the quad tubes are like over $40,000. So most of you are probably in the single tube or dual tube camp. So talking about the tubes themselves, figure of merit is a number that kind of explains what the tubes are, how good they are. And you can't necessarily go by brand. It's a whole interesting market. So basically, there's kind of 3 or so different tube manufacturers, and maybe I'm a little off by that. Maybe there's 5 or something. There's not very many. And basically, to make the tubes, they have to grow phosphorus. So they actually have to grow the stuff. So that's one of the reasons that contributes it to being so expensive, is the manufacturing process is kind of crazy. So getting back to it, figure of merit, there's a bunch of ratings, and figure of merit is a sum of a couple of those ratings. Now, if you go to like GPNVGs, which I went to, they're going to help walk you through those numbers, help educate you. T-Rex Arms is another excellent resource for all this. They really have done a fantastic job. If you want to check out their information, they'll really help you really understand the next level. This video I'm trying to keep to more of an overview, so we're not going to get into all that. All I'll really say about figure of merit, higher the number the better. I would say, you know, somewhere over 2300 FOM is going to be great. And then also don't let like 40, like a difference of 40, you know, like 40 FOM, like that's not really, you probably won't even notice the difference. So it's kind of the 2 pieces of advice I'll give on that. Of course, small increments, numbers don't mean a lot. Now the generation is a big thing. You don't want Gen 2. Just don't, that's not a way to save money that you're going to appreciate in the end. There's other ways to save that money. I'd rather have a single tube Gen 3 than a dual tube Gen 2. That's just, the Gen 3 is so much better at amplifying that light. You're going to see way better with one eye than you will two in that kind of scenario. And the green versus white phosphor, it started out green because the human eye picks up green way better than many other colors. Now, it was also a good way of kind of tinting, which is where the filming comes in. But Now, with how good the image is coming through the tube, they were able to go white, and you could just see, I feel like I see better through the white than the green. At the end of the day, if you got Gen 3, you know, again, I prefer unfilmed. I spent a lot of time with Gen 3 night vision, green filmed. And the first time I looked through my civilian version of my military tube, I had PVS 14, just like I was issued PVS 14, and it was so much better. And then at an event, I was able to put them side by side. So yeah, to sum it all up, basically, I like white phosphor unfilmed. I'd rather spend a little bit more money, honestly, because it is a little bit more. I don't want to save a little bit. I'd rather just spend a little bit more, get what I think is more performance out of something. Now, getting into some features that you'll find on the housing of various night vision is some have an IR emitter on board. It'll just illuminate a little bit of IR light. These MH1s actually illuminate a lot of IR light. For instance, on the PVS 14, I'm like, okay, it's kind of useless other than just signaling someone you're there. These, really good. Now, adjustable diopters in the back here. Something like true PVS 31s aren't going to have those. They're special forces. Everybody's eyes should be squared away. Shouldn't have to adjust them. For us people operating with these on the civilian side, some of our vision's fucked up. In fact, not even the civilian side. I'm in the regular side of the Army, and a bunch of us have shitty vision. So, yay for adjustable diopters. Now, there's also manual versus auto gain. Basically, it's like turning up the brightness on your TV or phone. Being able to adjust it manually versus adjusting it on its own. I've come to prefer the manual for some reasons, which I'll probably do a video on, like technique and things like that. But basically, I prefer the manual for a variety of reasons. You know, sometimes if you're just in poor light, you can crank them up. Really, ideally, you kind of want to crank them down more because you keep some of your night vision for your peripheral and all that. So there's some benefits. And then auto-gated, they're pretty much all auto-gated, which means if all of a sudden bright light flashes their way, they shut off to protect the tubes, because the tubes can and will burn out. So, just know that. Now, another big thing is mounting type. There's a standard, like, mil-spec version, I think from Noctis, how the PVS 14 mounts. It is shit. Fucking terrible. I love the dovetail style from Wilcox. There's also a ball detent version that comes on some, like the panoramics, the quad tubes, you know. But really, the dovetail is pretty common and probably the way to go, I would say, in most cases. Now, housing versus tubes, kind of interesting. You can actually, it's like buying a chassis to a car, or even the body and everything, and then getting to choose the drivetrain. So maybe you want a Miata with a Ford Coyote motor in it. It's up to you. Maybe you want a Corvette with, I don't know, a Honda Civic Si engine. I don't know why you would do that, but anyway. So that's kind of one thing, is you can really get the same quality of tubes out of your housing. The other interesting thing is, so like I have these, if I decide I want to try another set of housing, I don't necessarily have to go through acquiring another set of night vision. I can just acquire the housing and then get someone, if I have the skill, maybe I can do it, remove all the components and put them in the other housing. Or maybe you start with one PVS 14 and then eventually you get another one and then get the housing, and then you can have someone remove the tubes from the PVS 14s and put them in the housing. Anyway, I think you get the idea, but it's kind of cool, kind of makes it more interesting and a better as far as a, you know, very odd niche market, but it can definitely work to your benefit. So mounting, I already kind of mentioned, like Noctis, and then Wilcox is another brand, and then like J-Arms, which I think are from Noctis. And then there's some other brands out there. I went with Wilcox because it's tried, true, tested. You know, is it in a lot of these expensive? Yes, but gotta pay to play. You know, and some people buy like the knockoff Wilcox mount, things like that. I don't really recommend that, but I guess if you're just trying to save pinch pennies and then you plan and actually will get the real version later, I kind of get that, you know. Get some airsoft bullshit and then, again, go to the real thing later, and then at least you're putting in time training. I totally get that. I really don't recommend it Some of these places have great deals. They can include a mount with a purchase, etc. But again, at the end of the day, it's your wallet, your life. You figure out what you're going to do. So mounting on your head, really there's helmets, like this ballistic helmet I have here. Of course, there's bump helmets. Mainly, bump helmet is supposed to be lightweight, really just to mount this kind of stuff on. And then your ballistic helmet is actually to protect you from things like spall and shrapnel and bullets in many cases. So I use this ballistic helmet for the Army. And so I went ahead and just use a ballistic helmet. I don't want to move all this stuff to a bump helmet. I don't want to buy all this stuff again. I'd rather just have this helmet, and it's my one helmet. So that's that. I have a video on this helmet and the features on it, so I'm not going to go into that. Now there's also things called skull crushers, which are basically a bunch of straps and things that go on your head and then hold your night vision on. I really don't recommend that. Now there's a kind of a version of that, which is like a boonie cap, and some other people have like some beanies that'll do all that. Okay, cool. I would be kind of interested in this, the boonie hat one, but anyway, it's just options. But really, at the end of the day, like, you know, you get yourself a bump helmet, and some people will say, "Oh, I'll get a cheap Chinese ballistic one because what's it really matter if I'm going to get a bump helmet?" But anyway, well, if you're going to get a bump, and yeah, spend the money at least on a good bump if you're not going to on a ballistic. And if you're prepping for the end of the world, I still think you're okay with a bump. Ballistic could be good, but again, if you need to save money somewhere, get a nice bump instead of a shitty ballistic or a shitty bump for that matter. That's where you can save some money, especially if it means you get a real good mount. So, yeah, moving on. Additional accessories, you know, you got your lights and lasers. You can get, you know, this is a laser aiming module. It has an infrared laser as well as a visible laser. And then, of course, it has infrared illuminators. This one has two kinds. And then there's such a world of laser illuminators that I'm not going to get into it. But you have a lot of options. Wilcox is a great one. I love this. Raid XE is what I have. I don't recommend the APLC. D-balls are pretty good. And then the Maul. I've not really gotten to use one, but from Maul I've researched, understood. It seems really great. If you can get your hands on an Ingall, good for you. But yeah, and they run anywhere from, I think the least expensive ones now, well, Holosun, which I'm not going to recommend because it's Holosun. I mean, you can get those like $700. So again, it's something to train with. You can also get B.E. Myers, I think. Somebody makes just a laser, and that's pretty awesome. And then Surefire has various lights that are white light and infrared. So I can turn this head, and I can either do white light or infrared lighting. And so I like that feature a lot. I have that on pistols as well. And so yeah, going from there. The lasers, they're restricted and unrestricted, and basically the infrared is being emitted at over a certain level of power, and that's restricted by the FDA. So it's actually not illegal, but if you send it in to get help with it, if it's broken, you're not going to get it back. So maybe make a friend or something. Anyway, major brands models, like I said, Wilcox, B.E. Myers, Steiner makes the D-ball, and then like the PEC 15, LA5 are kind of from L3 Harris. So now Illuminator only. Other options outside the Surefire are Mod Light, and there's Arisaka, and there's some other brands, but I would really just stick with those three. Out of those three, Surefire is really the only one that does dual output, so white and IR, and that's what we have. I'll mention some cheap brands you can at least look into. SMS Laser seems to be kind of the better of the cheap brands. Holosun again is another one. I basically recommend you don't buy it because they're linked directly to the CCP. So, yeah, I don't know. Don't support communism. Then there's Somo Gear. Again, I think they're also pretty communist. And it's kind of airsofty stuff. Apparently they perform real well for however long they perform. So yeah, it's $300 versus $1,600 and more. But at the same time, you can spend $300 and it works for a week. So it's one of those, your odds of getting a bad one are pretty high. Not guaranteed, you could get a great one. But yeah, I don't want to throw away $300. So, not for me. Again, a lot of this stuff is expensive, but it's for a reason. So, now battery housings and types. Now you have on board these MH1s. have an onboard battery. A lot of your dual tube ones do. DTNVSs, you know, your BNVD 1531s. So some also have a plug for you to run external. So basically there's an external power source. Usually it would mount on the back of your helmet here, and then it kind of acts as a counterweight as well. And so, cool. And then some can do both. Just depends on kind of your preference, or you know what you bought comes with as well. Now most of these are going to run like AA or 123 alpha. MH1s, they currently run on 123 alpha. They have a new piece here that actually has a connection for, I don't remember what the name of the port is, but for a separate battery pack. And then eventually, if they don't already, you can replace this and run a AA instead. So kind of cool that their housing is modular like that. But anyway, so, and then some of the other ones, they're going to have variants. So you basically the same housing, but the battery types are different, how they run. So interesting thing to note. So getting into some of the accessories, you have counterweights. So I have these here, and they basically velcros to the back of the helmet and balances out the weight of the nods in the front. And then there's, for retention, there's lanyards. So I have a lanyard here that attaches. And then also there are bungees on the front, which I'm going to get some split rings to put through little holes that are on this housing. To then use these. I think it'll be a little smoother the way it holds on there. But especially for the cost, this nerd lanyard from Kinetic Consulting, you really can't beat. It's been a great item, and it's very versatile. Works on probably just about all housings. Now, counterweights, as I mentioned, and then some counterweights will attach to the back, and you put spare batteries in them, and then that's your counterweight. This just has a metal weight in it, so you can take it out and swap it out. I don't really need to. It's just on there. And then, of course, additional lighting, like a strobe. So this will strobe in IR. It strobes dim IR. It strobes bright IR. And then in the current, I have it in visible right now, which it looks like it's strobing on camera. It's not. Come on. And then it has actual strobe of the white and still the green. You can get these in many different ways. I did a light amount of research to pick which one I wanted, and then I picked it. You don't need to pick it just because I did. I have a little light that's only red. I can aim it. It's very dim. It's really just for looking at stuff like maps and vehicles. Again, some of this is more Army related than when I shoot civilian. This is one of the best things I've gotten. SNS mount for a Surefire Scout. Scout light, and then it's got, again, a head that can do white or IR, and it has an offsetting. You do not want to discharge any kind of light when you don't want to do it. So that's been a fantastic light. I can kind of aim it side to side, aim it straight up, forward, angle it. It's been fantastic. I really, really liked having that light. It's done so much for me, even outside of using it for night vision. And of course I got my Ear Pro here that's not really to do with night vision, but optical ramps, I love them. Alright, so getting into sacrificial lenses. Basically, it's just a lens that goes up front, so if you got these on and you run into a doorway or something, it protects the lenses. So if they break, you just unscrew them, screw a new set on, that's it. Then optic tube covers, they're basically just, it's either a little cover that goes with it, with a tiny little hole in it so that you can turn it on in a lit room or daylight, whatever. Just to check them out, like if you're testing them, doing some kind of diagnostic, make sure they're functioning correctly. And then there's just all kinds of other designs. Honestly, I like these with the opening from R&R Designs, the Noctis Shield. It's a shield and it's got this, I'll think of the word for Christ's sake, but anyway, you twist it, it opens it up, and so you can just totally open them up. It also helps to focus, so instead of actually focusing my nods for distance, then instead what I can do is just kind of throw them real quick, and then I can kind of open it back up. Now, it does change like how dim or bright it is, so if things are really dark, and so you need them up really bright, and you got your gain up, then you just need to focus with the actual tube part and not the whatever the hell it is. Yeah. So Optic Mounts is another big one to consider. This is GBRS, there's Unity, and the whole point is that you can passively aim with your nods. So if I got my tubes on here, I'm looking through my tubes and I'm able to see. What that does is you're trying to enact IR light discipline. So if you're fighting another force with night vision and you don't want to cast IR light into the opening, then you can just use your optic to aim and not really give up any signature. So that's the whole point of that. So there's different mounts that raise up the optics to make it easier to passive aim. Some claim you don't need those risers at all or anything like that. That's a whole debate we're not going to get into. But those are things that are available. Scalarworks, Unity, GBRS, bunch of others. So the suppressors is another big one. So flash signature reduction, big one. And then also heat signature. So this is designed, granted, I mean it heats up right away, but it's supposed to help cut down on the IR output of light from the heat. And some of the videos I'm rolling in, you're going to see that RC2 get pretty hot. Now again, we're all right close to it, so it kind of comes down to how much does it put out from someone looking at you from further away. Same thing with really all of this. Now suppressor, not going to get into them, but it also kind of makes it hard to pinpoint where the sound came from. So if you couple that with the flash reduction, it's going to be pretty good. So yeah. Kind of the final thing I'll say is getting even into pistols with night vision, you really want a red dot. So my configuration is red dot because whenever I present that dot without night vision, it's the same as when I am wearing night vision. And then this is a Surefire Vampire Light, so it does white light IR like I keep talking about. And so if I do need a little help from some light, I can turn on that IR light. So yeah, pistols, I mean you can get things with lasers on the bottom and everything in IR, and I haven't really seen where I need to. Especially because they're, from what I've heard, they're pretty notorious for losing zero, especially on a polymer frame gun. So to me, I just go with this setup, and so far, haven't had any issues. So getting into caveats and variables, night vision is my proving ground. I know all my fundamentals are spot on when everything's working under night vision. And let's talk about why that is. Well, for one, pistol presentation. For one, putting it out there. If it's not there under night vision, then it's pretty clear that something isn't going wrong, or isn't going well. If it's there during day and not under night, then I'm a little off. If I struggle during the day, I shouldn't even be shooting night vision like that. So there are those things. Now, it is about the little things. So your night vision does not really focus very far away and up close. You kind of have to choose which you're going to choose a little kind of further away, general distance. So stuff up close, like mag changes, or especially interacting with issues, that's going to be really bad, or really tricky. So if you're not practiced, it could be really bad. So that's where, what I mean when I say the little things. You'll see me fishing, trying to mess with the EOTech with the night vision on. I was new to the mount and all that, so I just hadn't been dry firing enough to be efficient. So now you can see in the video what I needed to work on at the time. Since then, I've definitely improved. So you want an ideal proficiency level. I have friends that I would take shooting. They could be a complete novice, and I'd have them shoot this gun in the daytime. But when it gets to white light shooting, or especially night vision shooting, they need to have a general weapons handling proficiency built up to probably an intermediate level. Mag changes, malfunction clearing, drawing and replacing the pistol, that can be very tricky. Just straight up walking. There were stuff we did in the Army just to get used to night vision, walking in the woods, walking in a room where someone had gone in before you and moved the furniture around. Things like that. You just need to understand your limitations and how to work around them when you're wearing night vision. Adjusting your nods, something I saw very early on that John Lovell does in classes, and so I made sure if I ever went to his class that I would be good, is I know if someone took this and just changed all the adjustments to something crazy, if I went and threw them on and turned them on, they were all crazy, I would be able to adjust everything back to how it's supposed to be without having to look. That's a big thing. Doing a bunch of these things, adjustments here, just like the rifle, you want to be able to do it without looking. So something to avoid cheap accessories, I've already kind of hit on it. I just wouldn't do it. I get it if you just want something for $20 so you can save another 3 months to then buy the expensive thing. Again, I understand that. But in general, I really just don't recommend the cheap accessories. So passive versus active aiming, I kind of mentioned a little bit, but active aiming, so you're going to have a laser here. You have a laser here, and so I aim the laser, pull the trigger, done. Now, passive aiming, I'm using my night vision tubes like I was showing earlier, and I'm looking through the optic without putting anything out. I think as more and more time goes by, especially if you want to find a place to save money, passive aim for a while. If you have the right optics, especially like an EOTech, it's really not very difficult, and you can save a lot of money. Minimum probably $1,600, probably more on average, anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, depending on what kind of laser aiming module you're going to buy. So if you want to save money, in fact, I would recommend you get dual tubes with no active aiming device versus a single tube with an active aiming device. Now again, that's just my preference based on my experience and what I think. I really value having these dual tubes after having a single tube for a while. So plus all my time with a single tube in the military, over 10 years at this point. So I really value the dual tubes, but that is personal preference. You might talk to somebody else, possibly someone that has more experience than me, and they wouldn't recommend it that way. I'm just telling you what I've been seeing and where I'm at with passive versus active. So yeah. And I will add passive versus active. Pretty much for pistol, it's all passive. Rifle, I see value in the active, partly because, for instance, military example, we can use our infrared lasers and illuminators to communicate with each other. It could be as much as signaling somebody, or especially if you're getting a firing team online, everyone's got their nods on, you can point to your subordinates or people you're directing, alright, so-and-so, I want you to be hitting here, so-and-so, I want you to cover this area over here, that kind of thing. So there is benefit more for the rifle than the pistol, I feel. So housing materials, you're basically going to have 3: aluminum, plastics, and then magnesium. These MH1s are magnesium. I love them. They're the lightest on the market except for the PVS-14s, which are single tube, and yet these are metal. Everything else between these and the next metal ones with the Ardent VGAs and all those, Manticore, I think, everything in between is all plastic. Hard plastic, durable, but this is just, I really love these MH1s. Magnesium is 40% lighter than aluminum. Granted, it's more susceptible to corrosion, but this has a lot of coating on it. So, moving on to the next. So then you got housing type, you got non-articulating, where it's a fixed bridge. They just always look like this. These are articulating, and then you have panning, and then like the GPNVGs, which really just basically non-articulating. So the non-articulating, they just come up or down. The articulating is nice because like if you're in a vehicle and you don't have a lot of headspace, you can just articulate them up and look under them. And also when you flop them up to the top of your head, they kind of pulls weight back versus having all that weight sticking out. So I like the articulation very, very much. Feature operation, you're basically going to have either buttons or knobs or a mixture of both. These MH1s have knobs. I've come around to really liking them. At first I didn't love the idea of the knob, but there's a lot of other benefits I'm not going to get into. It just kind of depends on the housing. I don't think there's one has to be one way or another. I think you're okay to look at your options. So when it comes down to pricing, it kind of breaks down pretty simple. One, they're expensive, as I mentioned before, because people have to grow the phosphor and then make all this shit. How many tubes? That's of course going to affect your price, not just because the housing size, but like all the shit inside. It's expensive. Now you have 2. Now, apart from that, non-articulating is always going to be less expensive than articulating. I think you'd be okay. There at one point I considered non-articulating, but now I'm kind of addicted to them. So if you are thinking non-articulating, kind of start with that. I think few people would go back. What's included? there's a battery pack included or whatever, and that kind of plays into the price too. Some websites run specials where you can order a helmet, bump helmet with it, and they kind of throw it in, whatever. Top brands, no particular order. Low Light Innovations, L3 Harris making the BNVD through 1531s. Low Light Innovations, by the way, MH1 housing. And these have other versions, but these are the general ones. Actin Black, they have the DTNVSs. That's probably what I would go with if I didn't get these. Also the RNVGAs. I'd be interested to try those as well. So DTNVSs, RNVGAs. Granted, I have very limited experience with DTNVSs, and I have no experience with the RNVGAs. So considerations when you're shopping for night vision: materials, weight, and what companies work from, especially when it comes to warranty work. How easy are they to work with? That kind of thing. You are probably going to have these for a while, and you know, they may get banged up, so you don't want to pay for a new set if you don't have to. So something else to consider when you're shopping: what are your needs? Do you need manual gain or auto gain? Do you need adjustable diopters? Do you need articulation? Those are the kind of things to think through that, again, can influence the price without compromising tubes. So you only have X amount of money to spend. Well, maybe don't get articulating nods, especially if you've never had dual tubes. You don't totally know what you're missing. And then get really good tubes versus articulating, get shitty tubes. You know, or split it somewhere in the middle. So, again, just things to think about. I do want to mention retailers real quick. GPNVGs or GP Armory, great place. I recommend them a lot. Again, they're who I got the stuff through. And then TNVC is another one. I bought stuff from them, including got another night vision from them. And then TRX Arms / Nocturnality, another great, not just dealer, but resource. And then Steel Industries, a friend of mine worked with them before in the past, and so he recommended them, at least at the time. And then you can do your research. There's decent research you can do on Reddit. The night vision group seems to be a lot less cutthroat and shitty than just the 2A in general. I think there's a lot of drama and craziness in the 2A forums. Not so much, I think, in the night vision for what I've seen. So I think you can get some realistic answers. So then, filming night vision activities, I use the Psionics Aurora. About all I have to say to that. And then how not to save cost. Don't get lesser gen, as I mentioned before. And don't get fast and loose with the aftermarket secondhand market. I almost caution you to always go first hand market, but I think you can make some exceptions, especially if you know somebody or if a dealer is selling secondhand. Then I think you kind of have some more options there. So let's get into the close. In the end, there are many options for night vision and the various accessories that supplement them. I always refer people to reputable brands. While that might cost more than Joe Bob's brand, I figure, like some things, this is not an area where you want to skimp out. Yes, night vision is expensive, and yes, the cost of accessories can get out of hand. But this is where research and good references can come in. If you want to save money, I do it in smart areas, such as I'd rather have a high-end, non-articulating set of dual tubes with a nice helmet and mount than a set of articulating dual tubes with a crap helmet and mount. Furthermore, I'd rather have a high-end PVS-14 with a nice helmet and mount than a non-articulating set of dual tubes with a crap helmet and mount. Continuing on, I'd rather have a nice PVS-14 than a set of any dual tubes that perform poorly, and so on and so forth. One can also use passive aiming and save for a LAM instead of getting everything simultaneously at a cheap price, as cheap quality and or performance will likely come with it. This has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.